Welcome back to Where Yellows Walk. It's been a long time since we've seen you folks, but Oxford United are back in pre-season, which means we are very much back. Connor, it's good to see you, mate. It's been a while since we've spoken. It's been a while since we've had Oxford United to talk about.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Sam. I can't wait. It's been since the last time we've spoken. There's not been much going on at Oxford United wise, but we've had the fixtures come out and we've had one signing, both of which we'll get on to talking about. And I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get a little bit giddy with the thought that football is about a month away now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we've got a bumper edition for you this week. Obviously, we're not going to be talking about the whole stadium situation because that date's been moved once again. Con and I would be doing an emergency episode when whatever happens with that happens. But we're going to start where Connor just mentioned it with the fixtures. Look, there was a lot of excitement, of course, around the Championship with the fact that, newly promoted Wrexham and Birmingham were taking on newly relegated Ipswich and Southampton in their first games. How are you feeling with the fact that, obviously, we're starting with a game at the Castad against Portsmouth?
Uh, I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's quite a nice fixture. I think that if I heard correctly off other podcasts, was that clubs can choose what fixture on a specific day, and we asked for the first game of the season to be at home. And if we're absolutely honest with ourselves, I think that if we've got any chance of getting 3 points at home, I think that Portsmouth might be one that we can look at. Their away form last year was horrific, so you never know; it might play into our hands. And anytime that Portsmouth have come to the Sam Stadium, it's always been a very, very lively atmosphere. And generally speaking, they've always been quite entertaining games. If we're looking at the start of the season, our first couple games look like we can get maybe at least 4 points out of them. But on paper, I should say, on paper, whether it's in practicality, the first couple months of the season, Sam, do look tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, Portsmouth is one of the more quote-unquote winnable games, but even then, obviously one of their away wins last season against us. It's definitely a fixture that kind of is more favourable. But, Portsmouth fans made this mistake last season. I think like some of us did when we looked at our first fixtures last campaign. No games in the Championship can be seen as write-offs. You've all got to be competitive in all of them to have a chance of staying up. Obviously, we've had some alterations already made in the fixtures because of some hand-egg sport has shifted our games away against Hull and against Bristol City. Now, both can be taking place on a Sunday. That's going to be absolutely blooming wonderful, coming back in the late on a Sunday afternoon from Hull and Bristol. But is there any kind of fixtures that really pop out to you when you look at the fixture list?
Bristol City won. I think that a lot of Oxford fans, even though that there's not that rivalry there, well, say there was a rivalry when there was a previous incumbent in both of our dugouts. I think that it's still a local-ish, I might add, ish, and it's an easy trip. So I think that a lot of fans, again, will go. The other big one I think that popped out earlier in the season was obviously Leicester City having former Premier League champions come. Well, that's been moved to 12:30 as well. But, Sam, I think the other big ones that you look out for was on Boxing Day, and I'm glad again that we got another Boxing Day game at home to Southampton, which will be a cracker. I think it'll be very interesting to see Will Steele how he does, and then again, I think a lot of fans were looking at either mainly Birmingham or Wrexham whenever those games were. I think that for a lot of fans, it's going to be a bit of a kick in the teeth that Wrexham especially will be on a midweek, but I'm right in thinking that in recent years, recent being about 15 or 20 years, we're maybe one of the only teams in the Championship that played Wrexham in the same league.
I think we were. I think, if I remember rightly, they were in the same division as us in the Blue Sky Prem. We got promoted, I think.
Yes.
I always look at that league because there was like, if you look at it, it's ridiculous in terms of the same teams that are in there. Obviously ourselves, Luton, York, I think Chester, were in there before they went bust. It was ridiculous Blue Square Prem. there's a few I wanted to highlight quickly. For me, as a lad being born in the part of Oxfordshire I'm from, the South Midlands derby, as I'll call it, against Birmingham City. I'm quite looking forward to that trip to St Andrews. Like you say, the Boxing Day, good. We've got another home game. You know, we all thought, we're going to get a Boxing Day or New Year's trip to the Valley, but no, that's happening a week before. But that New Year's trip is not looking nice at all. It's already tricky enough getting to Norfolk. Getting there at blooming New Year's Day is going to be absolutely horrible going to Portman Road.
Oh, yeah, it is. Did you go a few seasons ago under a bloke called Carl Robinson, and Ipswich just absolutely, they destroyed us. 3-0 down, I think. Got to 3-0 at 80 minutes. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Connor Chaplin just tucks it away, and then a fair amount of our away fans just said, yeah, that's it. See, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. It's our record against Ipswich is not a good one, and like I say, Portman Road is always a bit of a horrible place for us to go. I do like the fact that our last game of the season is away to Millwall. That, fingers crossed, depending on how the campaign goes, should be a really fun atmosphere. But like you say, you know, there's a lot of very tasty trips coming up this campaign, and the reality is that, you know, we can't look over any of them, because each one is going to be important if we want to stay in this division. Yeah,
Absolutely. Totally agree, to be honest. We know that one thing that we know that we're going to have to improve on is our away form. It was disgusting last season, if we're being absolutely frank about it. And if we want to be an established championship club, we're going to have to sort it out.
Absolutely, it's that away form. Was it 2 away wins all campaigning? It's, you know, and the first one didn't come till blooming New Year's. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
But like I said, we've got a bumper episode, so let's roll on. Obviously, retain list came out at the beginning of June, and there were quite a few names on it. So we're going to kind of rattle through and talk about kind of the main ones when it comes to our departures. Joe Bennett and Josh McEachran, the two most senior players that were released by the football club. Josh McEachran has gone to sign for Bristol Rovers. Max Waltman, George Franklin and Eddie Breary all unfortunately have been released. You know, the former two, Waltman and Franklin, just couldn't get lucky with injuries. It's really unfortunate because, you know, Franklin, local lad, captained the youth side. Family full of Oxford fans. You know, you would have hoped he would have gone on to be, you know, this generation's Sam Long. Waltman, you know, will always have the his antics after promotion. You know, in the bar with Ruben and Sparky. And speaking of Ruben Rodriguez, he's one of the two permanent departures. With him off to Brazil, to EC Vitoria. Very shock move to many. Certainly for me, I'm absolutely gutted. Ruben's one of my favourite players in the squad. And, you know, it's obviously a big move for him. You'd imagine he's on a fair bit more than he was at the Castad. And then we also had another sale, which was Idris El Mazouni, another very surprising one from my perspective. Again, a player I absolutely loved watching for us. Really disappointing, I think, in the sense that, you know, the amount we paid for him, how hyped he was. I thought he'd done enough to kind of earn a keep at the football club, especially obviously under Des Buckingham, was kind of faded out much more under Gary Rowett. But really gutted to see Idris go as well. And then the man that is perennially somehow owned but also not part of an Oxford United squad, that being Stuart Finley. He's been loaned to Hearts. His contract does expire next season, and it's been confirmed that he will leave the club at the end of that. One of the most disastrous transfers in the history of Oxford United. Thanks very much, Cole Robinson, for that. What was it, 6th month chasing of Stuart Finley, and then he only played I think like 20 odd games for us. Connor, go through some of those and give us your thoughts on some of the departures we've seen from our club.
I'll be as quick and as concise as I can. I think that Joe Bennett, yeah, he's 35 years old. He was a great servant at times. That is injury prone, but at League One he was a top end League One left back and played a pivotal role in us getting promotion. So thanks very much to Joe Bennett. He'll always be in our folklore for that famous day. McEachran, again. Local lads, again, he came in under Manning. I thought he did his job well. As far as I remember, there was a time where he went off the boil and Buckingham brought him back in, and he started to do his bit part. He wasn't starting as much as he was under Manning, as he was under Buckingham. However, I still thought that he was a good servant to the club, and now he's gone on to Bristol Rovers, which I think even that's a good signing for Bristol Rovers, from where I expect them to be in League Two next season. Waltman and the young lads, yeah, it's a shame that it didn't work out, but unfortunately, as brutal as it sounds, football is football. The industry is the industry, and that's the way it is. And they're still young, so we can only wish them the best of luck in the future and hope that they at least find themselves playing league football sometime soon. And then, yeah, you get on to Ruben Rodriguez. I'll be honest, Sam, I half expected him to leave, but the destination, rightly or wrongly, sideswept me.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect him to be going to Brazil and the Premier Division of Brazilian football. I mean, fair play to him, as you say. He's probably getting a fat wedge. Fat wedge being that he's probably multiple times what he was on at Oxford. And if you look at his career, his journey, it's been actually quite remarkable. Starting in the lower leagues of the Dutch division, going into taking the step into English football, having the balls to be able to go into non-league of all places, going to Notts County, and just having a remarkable rise. And next season, he's going to be playing, at the state in a 30,000 seat stadium, playing at some of some of the most iconic football clubs in South America, Corinthians at Sao Paulo, at Santos as well. I mean, he's had one hell of a career. So thank you, Ruben Rodriguez, especially for that assist. And how do you pronounce the club that he's going to? Because you pronounce it beautifully.
EC Vitoria.
EC Vitoria. I actually said to a fan on social media when they asked if he was a good player, and my response was yes. Overall, yeah, he's a very good player. He has the ability to unlock a defense with one pass. He isn't afraid to get in, and he has grit, and he has bundles of energy. That doesn't mean to say that he doesn't have his drawbacks and sometimes that he does go missing. But in my mind, I'm sure that you'll agree, Sam, that his personality completely made up for it. Yeah. As you know, definitely one of the biggest jokers in the squad. And then going on to Idris El Mizouni, I'm not surprised that he left. I'm more surprised that it was on a permanent and not on a loan. I half expected him to go out on loan. But, if we've managed to even if we made a small percentage loss on Idris El Mizouni, I don't think that, as you say, Rowett really fancied him anyway. I don't think that he was really going to fit into the Gary Rowett system. And I think that loads of fans will still remember him for getting a goal, that goal against Stoke, 1-0 very early in the season, which in the end, at the start, helped us to get to where we were and gave us a really good launch pad into Championship football.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Ruben's obviously the one that kind of, like I said, one of my favourite players in the squad, and kind of gutted to see him go. I feel for Sparky. Obviously, he's lost his best mate. But like you say, going to the Brasileiro Serie A, playing at the Maracanã, playing against if Neymar extends his contract, being able to play against his Santos side, absolutely ridiculous. Career progression for Ruben. Obviously, going to a country where Portuguese is the native language, so he's he can crack that back out. I'm sure he's not spoken Portuguese fluently for a couple of years. I like to say, having kind of spent a lot of his time in the Dutch second tier and obviously in the UK. The only one that kind of I really want to kind of one final mention to is Josh McEachran, because like you say, it's a really good move for him. I think Bristol Rovers. I said this to a mate of mine. McEachran, I think, he's this wild kind of contradiction in the sense that on the ball, I think arguably he's Premier League quality. It's the reason he was signed by Chelsea. You can see just on the ball the way he moves it, the way he uses his body is absolutely sublime. He could very much play that Pirlo role, that Pirlo did for Juventus all those years ago. But the McEachran had two big issues. Number one is the fact that his legs were made out of paper, and he couldn't, throughout his career, he couldn't have a sustained period in the team. And the other, that in British football, as a six, you need to have that physicality about you, and McEachran didn't have that. He was much more like a Spanish midfielder in the sense that he was able to get knocked off the ball quite effectively. But fingers crossed for we don't have much love for Rovers, but hopefully Josh Mack goes in and plays scum off the park at least.
Yeah, you know what, Sam? I think that's absolutely fair. I remember when he came in, we thought that it was a bit of a coup signing,
Mm.
bringing in McEachran, and I think that you're right. I think that you could definitely see the difference between Championship and League One football by Josh McEachran, if if we're honest about it. But yeah, yeah, that's fair.
So obviously there was, with the retained list, a lot of contract extensions were announced. I'm just going to run through them very quickly. Shami Poheta, he triggered a 1-year extension in his deal. Gatno Donker, the club triggered a 1-year extension in his contract. Richard McIntyre and Aidan Elliott-Wheeler had contract extensions triggered in their deal. Contract extensions triggered in their existing deals, I believe it was 1-year extensions for each of those as well. Matt Ingram, he was offered a new 12-year deal and has signed it. New contracts for Kieran Brown, obviously very, very important last campaign, absolutely buzzing, especially with the likes of Sheffield United and Middlesbrough reportedly circling around CB3. Jamie Cumming signing a brand new contract, obviously one of the better goalkeepers in the Championship by expected goals against last campaign. Really important to keep Jamie around the football club. The one I didn't expect at all, that being Tyler Goodrum, Tyler's third contract extension in 18 months. Obviously, a lot of speculation about potential moves for Tyler Goodrum, the likes of Coventry, Southampton, had been linked. So, good to... I'm sure there's a release clause hiking in them, maybe up to 8 figures. We'll wait and see down the line. And the final one is that Leo Snowden signed his first professional contract, Oxford's youngest ever player, having made his debut, I believe, under Liam Manning in the Pizza Cup 2 seasons ago. And obviously he's gone on tour with Gary Rowett. So obviously the club see a lot of exciting things in Leo Snowden.
Yeah, I think that before we go on and we went looking to sign any players, it was important that we got our own house in order first. That we did a bit of spring cleaning, so to say, make sure that we tie down some of these players. Because I think that we do have a good core of the squad there, and making sure that we had them secure and fighting off any interest in Tyler Goodrum's case, but also being able to still be attractive to players like Kieran Brown, who you say were getting interest from very, very established Championship clubs. It's been absolutely wonderful. Loads of fans have been very happy with that bit of business, especially from, as I've said, from Kieran Brown, Jamie Cumming, who there was an argument to say might be one of the best goalkeepers or top 5 goalkeepers in the league last season, but that's just me. Yeah, as well, and tying down Mark Harris as well. As much stick as I give him, you could tell his work rate is something that Gary Rowett loves, and it's something that's going to be wanting into a system. I don't think necessarily he's going to start, and we will be going out looking for a number 9, which I'm sure that will come in onto at some point during the pod. But yeah, the big one as well, tying down arguably our biggest monetary asset, Tyler Goodrum, I think might have been one of the most important pieces of business if we're looking from a longevity view, because if we're honest, we don't really expect him to be at Oxford forever. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very good by Ed there. And as you say, for the younger players, it's always nice to see some younger players come through and be given their professional contracts, and whether they're going to make any appearances this season, maybe in the first round of the League Cup, maybe go out on loan to some local non-league sides. Mm-hmm. There was one more that I wanted to mention, Sam. Cool. And it's gone out my head.
I'll give you a minute to get it back, because I was just going to mention the one of those kind of young players that I really hope we kind of see something from the club with is Aidan Elliott-Wheeler, because with Richard McIntyre, with Gatland Adonka, with Leo Snowden, they've gone on the Indonesian tour. Aidan Elliott-Wheeler is a player that's been messed around by this football club with several loans over the course of the last couple of years. He'd been sent to Oxford City, I think, for a month each in September and in January, I believe. He's an incredibly talented player, maybe not with the potential of like Championship level, but he's very talented, and the club they need to kind of they need to do better when it comes to finding places for these players to go and play, because you saw James Golding last season. Good loan in the second half of the campaign, got some decent minutes under his belt. He and Josh Johnson, I should also mention, I believe they had contract extensions triggered in their deals. And yeah, they've both gone on the tour. They're getting some minutes in the in Indonesia, and they're giving themselves a chance to be looked at by Gary Rowett, which the likes of Aiden Elliott-Wheeler hasn't really had much of, with all these very pointless 1 or 2 month loans at National League level.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair observation. I never really thought about it like that. So that's tricked me into thinking a bit like you. I didn't know that there were that many. If I'm completely honest, that Elliot Wheeler had gone on that many loans.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And obviously, it's then affects the fact that I think you can only play for a maximum of 2 teams in a campaign. So they can do it a couple of times. Then it's a case of, he's got to play for the youth ranks for the rest of the campaign. Pointless sometimes. I feel really bad for him. Let's go to the more exciting bits, shall we? Only one signing so far for Oxford United. That is the signing of Brian de Geersmacher for what's reported to be around £3 million. A new club record 3 from Heracles in the Eredivisie. Not to toot my own trumpet here, Com, but I'd identified this guy when we heard that Gary Rowett was going to the Netherlands to do some scouting. I was looking at areas of the pitch that we can invest in, what might be worth having a look at, and I identified Brian de Geersmacher as one that I think would be a really smart bit of business. Good age, goal scoring 6, but also plays in a box to box role. And I'm absolutely delighted that we've managed to seemingly beat the advances of Blackburn Rovers to get this over the line.
Yeah, first of all, it's our club record signing. What the figure that is on that, I think it's undisclosed, and it's been battered off and disputed by local media. But I think you're completely right. It's a very, very smart signing, and kudos to you for identifying him very early on. If you look at some of the stats that he had last season, it fits so nicely when putting up against Cameron Brannigan. And I get the feeling that they're just going to complement each other so well, and they're going to fit so nicely from any little bits that we've seen, which I'm sure that we'll talk about a certain game and pre-season tour that's been happening. Or you can't be anything but get excited about this signing. And if this is like the quality and this is the level that Ed Waldron and Gary Rowett are looking at, I think that we can give the club a benefit of the doubt. Maybe if signings aren't coming as quickly as maybe fans want, if we're looking for quality over quantity, this is what's going to have to do. Because in my opinion, there's no point in bringing in players from the leagues below or from any other far-flung corner of the world, either because they have a nice name or they had a good last half of the season to appease our fan base. Because other clubs have been making signings and they've been making more signings than us, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've been good signings. And there's only been a few clubs this season in the off-season and championship that have made good signings, and none of them have been what I would consider to be our rivals if our objective, again, is to simply stay up.
Yeah, definitely. I always go back to the example of Charlton 2 seasons ago when they signed a swath of a crap ton of players, all really good profiles, and then just didn't click. They ended up near the relegation scrap in 23-24. I always go back to that. You definitely want quality over quantity. Brian de Geersmacher, like I say, we'll come on to a certain game that he played in. I think Rowett has had success buying from the Eredivisie in the past. Well, obviously Ian Fleming, the main example of that. And yeah, I am glad that we're kind of looking in other markets, but also spending significant amounts of money. Long gone are the days we were, excited about signing Jimmy Fernandez from Barca B on a free transfer. But we're looking at players with a really good profile. I mean, if you want another 6 Oxford, I'll give you Luciano Valente from Groningen, another goal-scoring 6. Have a look at him. But there's a wide market to look at, and it's really refreshing, because we used to see kind of other sides, obviously, and the Republic of Ireland was the market we used to look into quite a lot for Sykes and McNally, for example. But I like that we're feeling more like a modern football club looking further afield than just the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I remember. Are you old enough to remember when we had a little bucket and pot going around to sign players in the conference? Like, we had to raise £5,000 to sign Jamie Cook, and then he scored like one of the most iconic goals at the Kassam. And now we've gone from doing that to spending over £2.5 million on players, which in the grand scheme of things, as disgusting as it sounds, it isn't that much. But when, for a club like us, where we've been in the past 15 years, it's quite remarkable.
And I'll also say fair play to the owners. There's been some criticism and stuff. I was one back in January. Questioning the signing of Ole Romane. I'm so glad to say I was so wrong with that signing. I absolutely love the lad now. But fair play to them. They're putting the money in their pocket. Shelling out a lot of money in a short space of time. Obviously, also the stadium plans. We've had owners in the past that have made a big splash immediately, and then kind of as you go down the line, you see their interest fall off a cliff. So far, touch wood, it seems that Editor here is an owner for the long term. Obviously, like you say, we only signed one player so far. There was the link that and Raut had discussed the fact he wanted at least 2 players on the plane heading to Indonesia. Now, I've heard that he thought that second player was going to be Kidlington boy Callum O'Dowda. He has obviously chosen to go to Hungary to play for Ferencváros. So, that's a player I'll be perfectly honest, I wanted, just because I like the romanticism of him coming back to where he all started and linking up with his best mate Sammy Long after all these years and all that kind of thing. If we're looking at kind of players that maybe Raut should be targeting, I've got one in mind there's a lot of links. Is there any that comes to mind for you, Connor?
Oh, you've put me on the spot with that one, Sam. No, you go ahead and I'll see what I can come up with.
So there's been rumours that a reported move for Ben Nelson to Chelsea has been progressing. A lot of speculation, obviously, that we might be able to get him on loan. I really hope so. I'd love that lad back at our football club. But like you identified earlier, Sparky signed a new contract. We do need another number 9. And another one that kind of has been floated around from the Eredivisie is Tobias Lorentzen. 6'4", 24-year-old Norwegian striker. He scored, I think it was 11 goals and got 3 assists in the Eredivisie last season, playing for Sparta Rotterdam. And he's a player that, from obviously there's only so much you can glean from highlight packages and all that kind of stuff, but he's a player that looks very impressive. That physical presence, not the most athletic of players, but definitely, I think, not to drag a certain player through the mud, but he's like Will Goodman, who's actually got knees.
Like Will Goodwin, who's actually got knees. I think I've only ever seen Will Goodwin in the flesh maybe twice. He's been here 18 months.
Yeah.
There is one player that I think that he's worked with Rowett at Millwall, and I think that a lot of fans might roll their eyes or turn their nose up at it.
Yeah.
Jed Wallace.
Okay.
Try
and convince me.
Okay, try and convince you. Right, okay. So we have experience in the Championship, yes, in Will Volks and also Matty Phillips. Also, just going on about Matty Phillips, expect him to be in the matchday squads a lot more than people expect this season, because I think that Rowett trusts him. I don't expect him to be on the pitch like as much as he was last season, but just expect him to be around the squad because I think that Rowett likes him. Okay, but anyway, Jed Wallace, yes. I think that brings Championship experience. I think that he's still got a fair amount to give at this level. He didn't have an absolutely terrific season last season by his own standards. Yeah, he's getting on a bit. He's 31, but I don't think there'd be anything wrong with a couple years contract. It might be a bit of a hefty wage. Maybe we're talking about Phillips levels again, but he has shown previously what he can do at this level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think down that right hand side, I think that if mainly what I'm also thinking about is that if Jimmy Plaheta had a bit of a mentor, and I think that Jed Wallace can be something that Jimmy Plaheta needs, but mainly a lot because of his somehow the times that he reacts on the field isn't conducive of what we want and puts a lot of the squad into jeopardy. So not necessarily I'm saying that Wallace can be somebody that a 31-year-old that will be playing out on the right every week, but can also be someone that can be a very good tutor to a fair few of the young players and wide players that we have. And I think that also he will be someone that will be quite trusted, as he also did quite well under Rowett during that season that I believe that they were within the playoffs on the final day.
I do get the idea of, experience in the championship and stuff like that. I've in the last couple of days come round to the idea of potentially, making an offer for Josh Windass if he's not paid by Sheffield Wednesday and he's allowed to leave on a free transfer. Because obviously experience in the championship is something that, it's not something we're lacking, but it'd be good to have one or two more senior faces with championship, with significant championship experience. It also should mention a lot of people obviously wanting Alex Matos back at the club. Obviously, Rout spoke about it after the last game of the season. I have heard that Alex Matos' first choice would not be Oxford United, and that he is prioritising other moves in the championship. But we'll wait and see. At the end of the day, he might, beggars might not be able to be choosers. But we'll wait and see. Also, I've got to throw out players pop on top of my head is have a look at Andreas Martin, guys. Almost got 30 goals and assists total for Racing Santander, or lifting them into a promotion fight in the second in La Liga 2. Really, really good player, 25-year-old winger. Definitely worth a look, but I think he might end up going to La Liga, so might end up being a bit out of our price range.
Yeah, I'm sure that La Liga clubs are sniffing around him.
So we've got a few more bits and pieces to cover. Very quickly, want to touch on some other bits of club news. Gary Rowett's Oxford United, of course, in Indonesia, and a lot of people said that maybe Rowett's side needed a bit of an overhaul this season. I disagree, but one Oxford side that did need an overhaul is Sam Rose's Oxford United. The women's team, wow. Their retain list, at the end of last season, they only retained 8 senior players. A lot of churn needed in the women's team. 8 new signings over the course of the last weeks and more to come. And in a positive step. So hopefully one day we get to see both Oxford United sides in their respective second division. A lean towards a almost professional training schedule, so the players can get as much time on the pitch as humanly possible. And Sam Rose has spoken about how he wants to make a promotion push this season, which, obviously last season was a very stop-start for the women's team. We all want to see both the men's and women's Oxford United sides in their respective second divisions, so best of luck to the women's side for next season. But of course, it doesn't matter who's playing for them, it matters the shirt they're wearing. Oxford United's 25-26 home shirt was released on the same day and a few hours before Brian de Geersmaker was announced, and I have to say it's an absolute beauty. Obviously, I'm the resident kit guy here at Where Yellows Walk, and I have to say it's a beautiful kit. Obviously, that kind of 90s throwback collar and all that kind of stuff. The similar throwback to the Thames pattern that was on the 23-24 third shirt. A lot to like about this, and it's definitely going to go down as one of our better shirts. What are you thinking, Con?
Macron just never fail to deliver, do they? They've never failed to deliver. Have you bought it yet?
Not yet. I always wait till kind of to get all 3 at once.
Oh, that's very, very smart, because if while Macron have been our kit manufacturers, I generally don't think that they've made a kit that's below 8 out of 10.
I
like
disagree about last season's
objectively.
home.
Last season's home. Oh, I quite liked last season's home.
It was definitely a grower, but I think when it was first revealed, it was very much the kind of that's kind of it did seem a bit. It was like fine, I thought, but I think you're right about the rest of the kits they've done have been absolutely sensational.
Well, last season at home at the start, it was more like a 1 or 2 because we had no sponsor, and it was absolutely
Yeah.
diabolical. But yeah, no, no, you're right. It is an absolutely stunning kit. It's beautiful. If there's one thing this club seems to know how to do, it's to know how to market a kit, and everything about it was wonderful. I like you. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
And I think in a lot of people's minds, it went up a couple of levels by the fact that the first image we saw was a sight Brian Kersmacher sat at Blenheim Palace doing a photo shoot. But I think I'd definitely increase it if you got a player to announce it in. Speaking of Brian de Kersmacher, he of course made his unofficial, non-competitive Oxford United debut as a second half substitute as Oxford United began their Indonesian tour, beating the Indonesian League All-Stars by 6-3. Not to look too much into pre-season, but we're winning the bloody league, aren't we?
We're going up. We're beating Reading's points total. We're actually beating Reading's points total. No, but on a serious note, it is the first game of pre-season. You know, there's if we're absolutely honest, if we're being honest about it, it was against a non-league quality, which is a bit concerning if we're conceding 3 goals with non-league quality with a fair few starters. That would be in the championship, but no, we can't read anything into it. Fully expect us to go on and win the tournament, but again, you can't read much into it. The tour is more for marketing Oxford United out there. So I think that at the moment it's going swimmingly well, and by all accounts, that Rowett and the players have been pleasantly surprised with how it's going, and I think they've all really indulged themselves in it. I think that there's been tens of Oxford United fans that managed to get the way out there. And I said in a post on X, I hope that in the future that the club and that the organisers are able to liaise with each other a lot further before, because I'm sure that those tens would have been a good hundreds, maybe even thousands, if Oxford United fans had enough warning and had enough time to be able to organize their life to be able to go out and make trips like that. Because I'm sure that because ever since that trip, Dan was not old enough to do it. But when before the promotion season in 15-16 when we went to Austria.
Yeah.
If I was only a couple of years older, would have been bang all over that. And there's one thing that I want to see in life before depart this earth, it's seeing Oxford United abroad, because that would be an absolutely wonderful experience. Done it with England a fair few times, but there's probably been nothing like doing it with your club.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's one of those, that Austria 2015 trip is spoken about as legend around this football club. That, and not so much I'm not sure if you saw, I think it was leading up to the what was it, just after promotion from the Blue Square Premier, there was a Boston trip that Michael Dewberry has talked about at length, and Chris Wilder and Beano, and they've all talked about it was an absolute car crash. But on this tour, like you say, it's definitely about expanding the brand. I mean, more people watch Oxford United beat the Indonesian All-Stars and watch Bayern Munich against Benfica at the Club World Cup. I'm just saying, lads, we're absolutely massive.
I didn't know that. That's mental.
It was I think it was 36k. I think it was. I saw a post on socials today, and it was 40k watched Oxford against the Indonesian All Stars. So yeah, I'm just saying we're bigger than the FIFA Club World Cup. But all jokes aside, like you say, it was very much a poor quality game in terms of their goalkeeper had a good first half. I think he could have done a lot better. In the second half with a couple of the goals. 2 screamers from Shemi Poheta and Brian de Gersmacher. Really poor defending for their equaliser by Matt Phillips. It's him again. If it was a teenager, of getting first minutes, I could understand it. He's a 34-year-old former Premier League player. You you can say it's pre-season all you like, but he was doing that all of last season, for the majority at least. I thought Jack Curry did quite well in the time he got, and good to see him kind of eased into life at Oxford United. Not so much a fan of Peter Kioso at centre back, but obviously that was due to the fact that Router didn't want to start Moore and Hellick, and obviously Sam Long reportedly picked up a bit of a knock in the training. But like you say, Router's talked about the fact that players have taken this pre-season tour in stride, really soaking up what it's like to be abroad in a different country for 2 weeks. Like I say, it's just a shame that kind of we won't have any pre-season aways this season, because only the Malaga and Leganes games are both at the Castad.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Especially after last season, had Palermo at home as well, and we were hoping that there would be some sort of European tour away. Yeah. But it is still, compared to some of the games that we used to have. I say used to have. It's going to sound really, really. Just about to swear. Then it's going to sound really, really poor of me, because I was going to say we used to do like Oxford City, Banbury, Didcot, big up the local Oxfordshire sides. It was always fun to go there, but having some clubs, especially like Malaga, come in, who, about a decade ago, were Champions League quarterfinalists and had some great players playing there, like Isco is the main example. Who's the other team that's coming? Is it like
Heracles?
I can't pronounce their name. Heracles, that's it. I want to say Hercules, but Heracles, yeah, okay.
Like you say, but both sides. Obviously, Malaga have struggled in recent years, but Leganes, spent a couple of years in La Liga recently. Obviously, Palermo gone from hosting Oxford last season to about to host Man City this season. It's weird we're doing these kind of pre-season friendlies, but it's all about giving the players a good test, because if you look at pre-season last year, obviously we faced Oxford City, Solihull Moors. And then I think we had, was it Exeter behind closed doors, and then we had Southampton and Palermo at Castad. So it's, we battered Southampton 5-0 and then lost 2-0 to Palermo. So pre-season means nothing at all, but at the end of the day, it's good tests for the players, get them sharp going into things. I'm just a little bit disappointed that the Thames Valley Derby pre-season game is going to be behind closed doors, but obviously they're cowards and didn't want to let Oxford and Reading fans scrap for the only chance they're going to get this season. But Connor, I think that's a very productive episode of Where Yellows Walk. Any final thoughts on the on anything we spoke about today?
No, but I will say that I think that us Oxford United fans are going to be pleasantly surprised this season. But I'll save that for the pre-season chat.
God, I hope so. And there's a lot of people kind of saying, oh, they might be surprise packs, they might be top half, and I'm like, lads, I'll be happy with another survival, just another year of being a championship side, because this is it's a scary looking league, the championship this year, with obviously big money spenders Wrexham and Birmingham, and the Premier League sides coming down and all that kind of stuff. So
I'll leave you on this. Right. I'll leave you on this cliffhanger. I disagree, and we'll get into that at a different time.
Indeed, we will. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Like so, we'll do an emergency pod when the Cherwell District Council decision eventually comes down, whenever that ends up being. And of course, we'll also be back shortly for the official pre-season predictions for Oxford United's campaign. But thank you very much for watching Where Yellows Walk. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.